My daughter banned me from my own kitchen. But when a frozen monster emerged from the freezer, our family dinner turned into pure chaos. You ever been told you can't touch your own food in your own house? Well, let me tell you. Last weekend I found myself in a situation that would make even the calmest grandma want to throw a pie, preferably at her own daughter. But before you judge, let me ask, what would you do if your own child tried to lay down the law in your kitchen? It all started on a sunny Saturday morning, the kind of morning that makes you want to throw open the windows and let the world in. I'd just come back from the grocery store, arms loaded with bags that seemed to multiply with every step. You know the feeling when you're balancing a carton of eggs on top of a bag of apples, praying you don't drop either, and you're already mentally planning where everything will go in the fridge. I was feeling pretty pleased with myself, to be honest. I'd managed to snag a few bargains, picked up all the ingredients for my famous lasagna, and even remembered the special gluten-free crackers my daughter's mother-in-law likes. If there was a gold medal for grocery shopping, I'd have been standing on the podium, waving to the crowd. As I started unloading, I couldn't help but hum a little tune. There's something so satisfying about filling up a fridge, isn't there? It's like a fresh start, a blank canvas just waiting for a masterpiece. I stacked the yogurts, lined up the vegetables, and tucked the chicken breasts neatly on the bottom shelf. I even arranged the condiments by height, ketchup, mustard, and that fancy balsamic glaze I only use when company comes over. For a moment, I felt like Martha Stewart on a good day, queen of my own kitchen. That's when the peace shattered. My daughter Emily came barreling into the kitchen like a tornado in yoga pants. Her eyes were wide, her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she had that look on her face, the one that says, something's about to go down. Before I could even ask what was wrong, she planted herself between me and the fridge, hands on her hips, and shouted, "Don't even think about touching that food. My husband's family is about to arrive." I froze, a block of cheddar in one hand and a bag of baby carrots in the other. For a split second, I wondered if I'd misheard her. Was she really telling me, in my own kitchen, not to touch the food I just bought? I blinked, trying to process it. Did I just get grounded in my own house? I glanced at the fridge, then at Emily, then back at the fridge, as if it might offer some explanation. But the fridge, as usual, remained silent. Before I could say a word, in walked my son-in-law, Mark. Now, Mark is a good man, kind, hardworking, and absolutely devoted to Emily. But he's also the type who likes to back up his wife no matter what. He puffed up his chest, trying to look authoritative, and declared, "If my wife said it, that's how it will be." He even gave me a little nod, as if to say, "Sorry, but you know how it is." I looked at the two of them standing there like a united front, and I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. Part of me wanted to protest. After all, wasn't this my house, my kitchen, my groceries? But another part of me, the part that's been a mother for over 30 years, knew better. Sometimes it's just easier to let the kids think they're in charge. Besides, I could see how nervous Emily was. She wanted everything to be perfect for her in-laws' visit, and if that meant I had to pretend the fridge was off limits, so be it. So I smiled and nodded, playing along. "Of course, dear," I said, setting the cheddar and carrots on the counter. "Your kitchen, your rules." I could see the relief wash over her face, and Mark gave me a grateful smile. For a moment, I felt a little pang. When did the roles reverse? When did my little girl become the one giving orders in the kitchen? But I pushed the thought aside. There would be time to reflect later. Right now, there was a dinner to prepare, and apparently, I was on a need-to-know basis. As Emily bustled around, checking the oven and rearranging the place settings for the third time, I found myself tiptoeing around my own kitchen. Every time I reached for a snack or tried to help, she'd swoop in with a gentle but firm, "Not that, Mom," or "Let me handle it, Mom." I started to feel like a guest in my own home, relegated to the sidelines while the younger generation took over. I tried to remind myself that this was a good thing. Emily was confident, capable, and eager to impress her in-laws. Still, I couldn't help but feel a little left out. At one point, I caught Mark sneaking a handful of grapes from the fruit bowl. He winked at me, and I had to stifle a giggle. Maybe I wasn't the only one feeling a bit out of place. We shared a silent moment of camaraderie, two outsiders in the kingdom of Emily. As the afternoon wore on, the house filled with the smells of roasting chicken and fresh bread. Emily's nerves seemed to settle, and she even let me help set the table, under her watchful eye, of course. I found myself smiling, remembering all the times I'd been in her shoes, desperate to make a good impression, wanting everything to be just right. By the time the doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of the in-laws. The kitchen was spotless, the table was set, and the fridge was still fully stocked, untouched, just as Emily had decreed. I took a deep breath, smoothed my hair, and prepared to play the gracious hostess. After all, sometimes the best thing a mother can do is step back and let her daughter shine, even if it means pretending the fridge is off limits in her own home. Little did I know, the real drama was still to come. If you've ever been a guest in your own home, you'll know exactly how I felt that afternoon. There I was, tiptoeing around my own kitchen, stomach growling, while the royal feast I'd so lovingly shopped for sat untouched behind the gleaming refrigerator door. I kept glancing at that fridge like it was a forbidden treasure chest, sparkling with the promise of cold cuts, cheese, and that decadent chocolate cake I'd picked up on a whim. Have you ever tried to ignore a chocolate cake that's calling your name? It's torture, pure and simple. I swear I could almost hear it whispering, just one little slice. No one will notice. But every time I so much as drifted in the direction of the fridge, Emily would swoop in, eyes narrowed, and give me the "don't you dare, Mom" look. I started to wonder whose house this was again. Meanwhile, Emily was a whirlwind of activity, darting from room to room, fluffing pillows and lighting candles, acting like Martha Stewart's more stressed-out twin. She'd arranged the throw pillows on the couch so many times I was starting to worry the fabric would wear thin. She even polished the silverware which, let's be honest, hadn't seen the light of day since last Thanksgiving. I watched her light the good candles, the ones she usually saves for special occasions, and I had to bite my tongue to keep from reminding her that her mother-in-law was allergic to anything floral. But Emily was on a mission, and nothing was going to stop her. Mark, my son-in-law, was no better. He kept peeking out the window every few minutes, as if his family might parachute in at any moment. I half expected to see a line of SUVs pulling up the driveway, or maybe a marching band announcing their arrival. Every time a car drove by, Mark would tense up, then relax when it kept going. I could see the nerves written all over his face, and I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I tried to help. Really, I did. I offered to chop some vegetables, set the table, even just fold the napkins. But every time I reached for a snack or tried to lend a hand, Emily would intercept me with a gentle but firm, "I've got it, Mom." At one point, I reached for a handful of grapes, and she practically leapt across the kitchen to stop me. "Not those, Mom. We need them for the fruit platter." I raised an eyebrow, but she was already off to rearrange the cheese board for the third time. I started to feel like a child again, sneaking cookies before dinner, except this time the roles were reversed. So, I did what any self-respecting mother would do. I found a quiet corner and watched the show. I perched on a bar stool, sipping my coffee, and tried to stay out of the way. I couldn't help but smile as I watched Emily and Mark fuss over every little detail. It was sweet, really, how much they cared about making a good impression. I remembered the first time I hosted my in-laws, how I'd scrubbed every inch of the house and agonized over the menu. I'd wanted everything to be perfect, just like Emily did now. Funny how life comes full circle, isn't it? But as the minutes ticked by, my stomach started to protest loudly. I glanced at the clock. Still an hour until the in-laws were due to arrive. My mind wandered back to that chocolate cake sitting so innocently in the fridge. Maybe just a tiny sliver, I thought. No one would notice. I slid off the bar stool and tiptoed toward the fridge, heart pounding like a teenager sneaking in after curfew. I had my hand on the handle when I heard Emily's voice behind me. "Mom," she said, her tone half warning, half plea. I froze, caught in the act. She didn't have to say another word. I backed away, hands raised in surrender, and she gave me a grateful smile before returning to her whirlwind of activity. I wandered into the living room where Mark was still stationed at the window. "Any sign of the cavalry?" I joked, trying to lighten the mood. He chuckled, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. "They're always early," he muttered, glancing at his watch. "I just want everything to go smoothly." I patted his arm, remembering how nerve-wracking it could be to host family. "It'll be fine," I assured him. "You've both done a wonderful job." He smiled, looking a little less anxious, and I felt a surge of pride for both of them. Back in the kitchen, Emily was fussing with the centerpiece, adjusting the flowers just so. I watched her for a moment, marveling at how grown-up she looked. When did my little girl become this capable, confident woman? I felt a pang of nostalgia mixed with a touch of sadness. It's a strange thing watching your children take over the roles you once held, but it's also a gift seeing them thrive and make their own traditions. As the clock inched closer to the big moment, the house was spotless, the table was set, and the food was still off limits. My stomach grumbled in protest, but I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. Here I was, the matriarch of the family, sneaking around my own kitchen like a thief in the night. But as I looked at Emily and Mark working together to create the perfect evening, I realized that maybe, just maybe, it was worth it. After all, sometimes the best thing you can do is step back, let the next generation take the reins and enjoy the show, even if it means waiting a little longer for that slice of chocolate cake. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of waiting, the big moment arrived. The doorbell rang, and the house seemed to hold its breath. Emily darted to the door, smoothing her hair one last time, while Mark straightened his shirt and tried to look casual, though I could see the nerves in his eyes. I stood back, watching with a mix of pride and amusement as they opened the door to greet the in-laws. In they came, all smiles and hugs, arms full of flowers and a bottle of wine. The kind of entrance that makes you feel like you're in a commercial for a perfect family gathering. There were handshakes and cheek kisses, and for a moment the house was filled with a warm, happy chaos that only family can bring. Dinner was, if I do say so myself, an absolute hit. The table was set beautifully. The candles flickered just so, and the food, well, let's just say there wasn't a crumb left by the end of the meal. Everyone raved about the roast chicken, the garlic mashed potatoes, and the green beans with almonds. Even the gluten-free crackers got a nod of approval from Mark's mother, who, as it turned out, was not nearly as picky as Emily had feared. I sat back and watched as my daughter beamed with pride, basking in the compliments. I couldn't help but feel a little smug, knowing that I'd done most of the shopping and prepping, but I kept that to myself. After all, this was Emily's night to shine, and she deserved every bit of it. As the evening wore on, the conversation flowed easily. There was laughter, stories from both sides of the family, and even a few embarrassing childhood tales that had everyone in stitches. I watched Emily and Mark working together seamlessly, refilling glasses and clearing plates, and I felt a wave of contentment. This was what family was all about, coming together, sharing a meal, and making memories. I thought to myself, maybe I could get used to this new dynamic. Maybe it's not so bad letting the kids take over once in a while. But as any seasoned mother knows, no family gathering is complete without a little drama, and ours was about to arrive right on schedule. After dinner, as everyone settled into the living room for coffee and conversation, Emily announced that it was time for dessert. She'd been talking up the chocolate cake all evening, promising it was the perfect sweet ending to a perfect meal. She disappeared into the kitchen, humming to herself, and I could hear her opening the freezer to grab the ice cream. I was just about to pour myself another cup of coffee when suddenly a blood-curdling scream echoed through the house. A scream so loud and so shrill it could have woken the dead. The room fell silent, every head turning toward the kitchen in alarm. A moment later, Emily came running into the living room, her face as pale as a ghost, eyes wide with terror. She looked like she'd just seen a monster, or worse, a mouse. "Mom," she gasped, clutching the doorway for support. "There's something in the freezer." Now, let me ask you, what would you do if your grown child came running to you like a 5-year-old who just saw a monster under the bed? I'll admit my first instinct was to laugh, but the look on Emily's face told me this was no time for jokes. I set down my coffee and hurried into the kitchen, followed closely by Mark and his parents, who looked both concerned and a little curious. Emily pointed a trembling finger at the open freezer. "It's in there," she whispered, as if whatever it was might hear her. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever horror awaited me. Was it a mouse? A spider? Some forgotten science experiment gone rogue? I reached into the freezer, moving aside the bag of frozen peas and the tub of vanilla ice cream, and then I saw it. There, wedged in the back of the freezer, was a giant, hairy, frozen turkey. I'd bought it on sale a few weeks ago, planning to save it for Thanksgiving, and promptly forgot all about it. The way it was positioned, with its legs sticking out at odd angles and a layer of frost giving it a ghostly appearance, I could see how it might look a little unsettling, especially if you weren't expecting it. I burst out laughing. The tension melted away in an instant. "Emily, it's just the turkey," I said, pulling it out and holding it up for everyone to see. "I bought it last week and forgot to tell you. Looks like our Thanksgiving guest arrived a little early." For a moment, there was silence, and then the whole room erupted in laughter. Even Emily, still a little shaky, managed a weak smile. Mark's father clapped me on the back, chuckling. Well, that's one way to keep dessert interesting. Mark's mother wiped tears of laughter from her eyes, and Emily finally let out a relieved giggle. As we all gathered around the kitchen, the turkey sitting proudly on the counter, I realized that this was the moment we'd remember. Not the perfectly set table or the flawless meal, but the unexpected, hilarious chaos that brought us all together. Emily hugged me, still laughing, and whispered, "Only in our family, Mom, only in our family." And you know what? She was absolutely right. I walked over to the freezer, doing my best to keep a straight face, though I could feel the laughter bubbling up inside me. Emily was still standing there, pointing with a trembling finger at the back of the freezer, her eyes wide as saucers. The rest of the family had gathered in the kitchen doorway, craning their necks to see what all the fuss was about. I leaned in, peered past the bags of frozen peas and the half-eaten tub of vanilla ice cream, and there it was, the infamous hairy frozen turkey. I'd completely forgotten about it. I'd bought it on sale a few weeks ago, thinking I was being clever and thrifty, and then promptly stuffed it in the back of the freezer, out of sight and out of mind. Now, with a layer of frost clinging to its skin and its legs sticking out at odd angles, it looked less like a holiday centerpiece and more like a creature from a low-budget horror movie. For a split second, I could see how Emily might have mistaken it for something alive, ready to leap out and join the party. I turned to look at her, trying to keep my composure, but the corners of my mouth were already twitching. "Emily," I said, holding up the turkey for everyone to see, "I think we found your monster." The room was silent for a heartbeat, and then, as if on cue, my daughter burst out laughing. It started as a giggle, then grew into a full-blown belly laugh, the kind that makes your sides ache and your eyes water. Mark, his parents, and even I couldn't help but join in. The kitchen, which had been filled with so much tension and nervous energy just moments before, was suddenly alive with laughter. Mark's father slapped the counter, tears streaming down his face, while his mother leaned against the fridge, gasping for breath between fits of giggles. Even Emily, who had been so tightly wound all day, was doubled over, clutching her stomach and shaking her head. It was as if the frozen turkey had cast a spell, melting away all the stress and anxiety that had built up over the course of the day. The in-laws, who had seemed a little stiff and formal at first, were suddenly relaxed and at ease, swapping stories about their own kitchen mishaps and holiday disasters. Mark's mother told us about the time she'd accidentally cooked a plastic bag inside a roast, while his father confessed to once mistaking powdered sugar for flour in a batch of cookies. We all laughed until our cheeks hurt, the kind of laughter that brings people together and makes you forget, even for a moment, about the little things that don't really matter. As the laughter died down, Emily wiped her eyes and looked at me, a mischievous glint in her eye. "You know, Mom," she said, "I think you planned this." I raised an eyebrow, feigning innocence. "Me? Plan a turkey ambush? Never." But the truth was, I couldn't have orchestrated a better ending to the evening if I'd tried. All the fuss about not touching the food, all the rules and the stress had melted away in the face of one silly, unexpected moment. It was a reminder that sometimes the best memories come from the things you never see coming. We finally got around to dessert, and as Emily served the chocolate cake and scooped out the ice cream, carefully avoiding the turkey, of course, the conversation flowed easily. The in-laws complimented the meal. Emily beamed with pride, and Mark looked at me with a grateful smile. I could see that the ice had truly been broken, and not just in the freezer. The evening, which had started with so much pressure to be perfect, had turned into something far more special, a night filled with laughter, connection, and a story we'd be telling for years to come. As the guests prepared to leave, Mark's mother hugged me and whispered, "Thank you for a wonderful evening. You have a lovely family." I smiled, feeling a warmth in my chest that had nothing to do with the wine or the food. Emily hugged me too, and for a moment she was my little girl again, grateful for her mother's steady presence. "Thanks for saving the day, Mom," she whispered, "and for not saying, 'I told you so.'" I just winked and squeezed her hand. After all, a little mystery in the freezer never hurt anyone. Later that night, as I tidied up the kitchen and put away the last of the dishes, I found myself chuckling at the memory of Emily's face when she saw the turkey. I thought about all the times I'd tried to make everything perfect, only to have something go hilariously wrong. And I realized that those were always the moments we remembered most, the times when things didn't go according to plan, but somehow turned out even better. Next time someone tells you not to touch the food in your own house, just remember, you might be the one who gets the last laugh. Life is too short to worry about a little chaos in the kitchen. Sometimes the best stories come from the silliest moments, and the sweetest revenge is simply letting yourself enjoy them. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe for more tales of family, food, and a little bit of mischief. And tell me, What's the funniest thing you've ever found in your freezer? I'd love to hear your stories too. Finally, my story is over, and no matter what the future holds, I will continue my journey. Thank you for listening to my story.